Joel. So very glad to see everybody here tonight. Miss Sandy, I see Bernie sitting there in the corner. Always good to see him. Anyway, like Joel was saying, if there's anybody who doesn't remember, my name is Tracy Eure. I graduated from veterinary school at NC State University in Raleigh in 1997. I opened a veterinary office in Moyock, North Carolina, down in the boonies in 1998, and I've been there ever since. I do 99.9% of what we do are dogs and cats. I have one associate veterinarian who works with me. My father has a few cows, and he calls me very often and tells me I still owe him. So I go over and work on his cows sometimes. But for the most part, it's dogs and cats. But if you have any questions, of course, tonight, don't hesitate to send them, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. And Joel's got a few already, I believe. So Joel, I will turn it back over to you. Question away.
All right, sounds good. So we actually have one right off the bat from the chat room. And so this is about golden retrievers. This person asked, my golden retriever, Lincoln, that might give it away, bites and scratches himself nonstop. Can you address allergies and how to best treat hot spots?
Definitely. So allergies is one of the biggest things that we see and one of the biggest things that we talk about at the office. And allergies are something that we see in dogs and cats as well. When we think of allergies in people, we think about runny eyes, runny nose, and sinus trouble. Lots of people have allergies, but there's some people who never do. Lots of dogs and cats have allergies, but there's many who never do. When you think of allergies, you think about the things that cause that: grass, weeds, pollen, and stuff like that. The biggest difference between dogs and cats and people is that people have sinus trouble. Dogs and cats get itchy. You rarely see a lot of sinus trouble secondary to allergies for dogs and cats. It is almost always either in the dog, itchy feet, itchy inflamed ear canals, itchy skin. And in the cats, they have a little bit of a different issue where they'll get what's called miliary dermatitis. That's the big fancy doctor word for scabby skin. And Joel, you may have a picture of that somewhere in there. And there's lots of different ways to treat it depending on the severity of it. Just like in people, there are a lot of dogs and cats who have very seasonal allergies. And you can look at some animals that walk in the door, and I can tell you what month it is, even if I don't know, because I always see the same dogs or the same cats all the time. So the picture that just came up is a kitty cat that we saw not very long ago. And the owner thought, has my cat been beaten up by another animal? And if you look at all these scabs and stuff on the ears, it wasn't a fight or anything that caused that. This is self-inflicted, and this can happen extremely fast. These animals will get very itchy very quickly. And the first thing they start to do is itch. A dog or a cat is often like a 4-year-old child that gets a mosquito bite. When they start to itch, they do not leave it alone. And then all the stuff that comes after that is secondary. So lots of people come in the door and they say, boy, my dog smells funny, or my dog's ears are yucky looking. And when you see that, 99.9% of the time, you're fighting with an allergy issue. And so you treat them accordingly. A lot of these animals have to be treated with either steroids like prednisone. Often you treat the secondary problem with shampoo, antibiotics, and things like that. And I tell folks that you'll see them sometimes get almost bad enough to come see us, and then they start to feel a little better. That's no different than the person who's been treating their sinus trouble with Benadryl, and they think about going to see the doctor, and then they get better. But sometimes the Benadryl doesn't do the trick, and you have to go see the doctor to get some medication to help with your sinus allergies. Dogs and cats are the exact same way. And many of these animals are very seasonal to mild, and you can even use over-the-counter antihistamines on them. But many of them are repetitive. They're over and over and over again. And sometimes I use the term the 12-monther. That's the animal who has something that makes them itchy virtually 12 months out of the year. And so if you have that, there's lots of different things you can do to try to combat that. But it is a much more common problem than I ever thought it would be.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks for that.
I have one other thing I'd like to say that someone had asked me the other day at church. I apologize there, Joel. Some people or some animals will have something that you'll hear your veterinarian call a hot spot. A hot spot is a layman/doctor term that we use for an area. You see them on cats, they're more common on dogs. And it's an area where the animal has sometimes allergy related, but sometimes it is simply where animal got stung by something, bit by something. And just like that 4-year-old kid that won't leave a mosquito bite alone, the dog decides, I'm going to itch this. And then he says, now it smells funny, so I'm going to scratch it more. And so you'll get these areas that are extremely itchy. They often have a fluid or an exudate that oozes out of them. They become secondarily infected by bacteria very, very fast. And to Hunter's dog, the golden retriever, he seems to have the most perfect, not her dog in general, but golden retrievers in general, the most perfect length of hair for that stuff to kind of ball up into little mats and knots and stuff. You often end up having to shave those and treat them topically and orally at the same time, but they can be quite a mess, quite a mess. Anyway, I'm sorry, Joel, go ahead.
No worries, good stuff. Thanks for that. So we've got lots of questions. So we're going to stick with dog family here. This time, French Bulldog. So how do I get my French Bulldog to slow down when eating and drinking? She eats and drinks so fast that she'll end up throwing up.
Okay, so for eating and drinking too rapidly, there are a few medical reasons for an animal to drink too much or too fast. You think about diabetes, kidney disease, and another endocrine disorder called Cushing's disease. But the vast majority of the time, it's not that. They run up and they go, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to eat and drink, especially on the food. And so they will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and often eat. So I call them the vacuum cleaner dogs. And they eat so fast, they look like they're vacuuming up their food. And then sometimes twice a week, sometimes all the time, they regurgitate or throw their food back up. And it's rarely a medical problem if it's eating and drinking. It is usually a behavior issue. They just think it's a great thing to do. And it's nothing that the owner's doing wrong when that happens. I always make a joke at work about myself. If my brother's sitting around and the pizza's laying there, I'm going to eat it fast because he's going to take it from me if I don't. And so the dog's kind of doing the same sort of thing. And there are, in the drinking category, that can be a little bit difficult because you want to leave water down all the time, but you can also pull that up from time to time. And if you're watching the dog drink too fast, you can back that up or pull that up. In the food category for the dog who eats so fast that they want to throw up, any place you go that sells any type of dog or cat stuff, Walmart, PetSmart, Amazon, you can buy different bowls that will either have fingers that stick up in them or spiral bowls, and they're simply made to slow the dog down from eating, just make it harder. I even have a couple of clients who just take, now it's a mess, but they take a giant sheet pan and dump the food out on the sheet pan and let the dog kind of pick it up as he goes, but that will usually help that.
Cool. So kind of spread it out so they have to graze on it a little bit. So
Exactly. And often if you can slow them up by 30 seconds, it will often stop the vomiting problem. Yeah.
Awesome. Helpful. So they don't have to completely slow down and take an hour to eat. It's just enough to not be gulping it in.
Yes. And they're rarely vomiting. They usually eat so fast they choke. And so that's why, it's not a life-threatening choke. It's just, I'm gonna eat. Oh God, and up it comes again. But yeah, just anything you can do to slow them up will help.
Awesome, good stuff. Thanks for that one.
Yes,
next one. So we got a lot of dog people here tonight. It seems like another dog question, and maybe we can extend this to other pets as well. Sure. But does an elderly dog over 12? Or is there another age range? Do elderly pets and dogs need to be examined yearly as long as inoculations are up to date?
So there's a lot of debate on that, and technically, the veterinary world classifies a senior pet, believe it or not, at 7 or over. And dogs, the historical term is, okay, for every year of a dog's life, it's 7 years of a person's life, and that's kind of true. In the beginning, the dogs and cats age a little faster, and the larger the dog, the shorter the lifespan in general. If you see Mrs. Jones's Chihuahua, she might make 15 or 16 years old. But if you go up to the other extreme, the Great Dane, it's rare to see any of those make 9 or 10. And so they do age very, very rapidly. The biggest thing to start to do at 7 or 8, depending on what your veterinarian recommends, is to, even if the dog looks good, is to think about, and I'll put it this way, I tell my owners, we need to think about doing the same blood work that they would do on you or me when we hit a certain age, 50, 60, whatever it is that the doc wants to do it on. And so what you're looking for is to try to get ahead of any problem that you may have have. And you'd be surprised at the things that aren't at the time life-threatening or a problem, but thyroid issues, early kidney disease, and early liver disease, you can slow down or thwart a tremendous amount of that with an exam and some blood work, even when you don't feel like you need one. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So we'll continue on. We've got tons of questions here. Before we do, I just want to mention to everybody, there was a Zoom glitch. So if you've got friends that are trying to get in and it's asking for a passcode, I've put that in the chat. It's 0852062, I think. But look in the chat and you can text that and email that out to folks so we can get as many in. Apologize for that. Zoom is always changing its setup. So for those of you also that have come in recently since we've started, if you've got questions about your pets, just drop them in the chat and we're kind of running through and doing a rapid fire here. And Dr. Tracy is bringing us up to speed and filling us in. We've got lots of dog questions so far. So if you've got other pets as well, I want a good snake questioner. We need to give them a challenge. Or does anyone have a tarantula? We need a good tarantula question.
Joel, you're hurting now.
You got off easy the last time around. It was all dogs and cats. I want to be impressed here. I'm saving all the rabbit questions for the end. Okay, so another dog question. You got an easy one. Well, maybe an easy one. This one has to do with training. So this person asks, our Bernedoodle, which is a new one to me. I bet that's a cute dog. Bernedoodle likes to jump up on people to play. How do we address this playful jumping to get her to stop?
Gotcha. So that's a very good question. It happens all the time. The first thing I'll say is for training in general, dogs are like people. It is much easier to train a young dog to stop or start doing something than it is an old dog. And I use my father as an example. You will change absolutely nothing he does. You might change my brother's children a little bit. So it's the same sort of thing. It doesn't mean to give up on an older dog, but it's a lot easier on a young dog. Now, some people think that this is sounds harsh, and this is not a painful thing or a hurting thing. But the first thing to do is that you have to deter the dog every time the dog jumps on you. The problem you have in a lot of households happens here. At my house, is that when you have a dog who jumps on you, if half the people in the house go, "Oh boy, I love that, please come jump on me," then the dog goes, "I should jump on people." But then if the other half of the people go, "No, I hate that, please stop," it's very confusing to the dog. And so I tell folks, first yell at everybody in the house, get everybody on board to do the exact same thing every time. Dogs like repetition, and they learn very well from repetition, just like people, just like kids. And the thing that you can do that sounds harsh, that is not, is when the dog jumps on you, it's one easy raise of the knee, not kicking, you're not punting a football, but it's one easy raise of the knee with some command that everybody uses. No, no jump, down, what have you. And then the other thing you have to be ready to do is that, and it doesn't take long. After a few days of that, the dog goes, "Man, every time I jump on him or her, the knee comes into my chest," or whatever. And then the other thing, and it's a gentle thing, it's nothing rough. The other thing that you can do is that when the dog starts to come to you and is not jumping, have something, whatever the dog likes, the tiniest piece of food, a treat, and say, "Good boy," bend down and meet the dog. That will break almost all of them, unless they're 12 years old and been doing it their whole life. They're hard to break when they get older.
Awesome. And with that too, I'm going to follow up with one of the questions that we had. I think it was a carryover from last time, or on this other list that has to do with training. Can you talk a little bit about shock collars, training collars, those different things from a veterinarian's perspective, and what's safe, what's appropriate, which ones to stay away from?
Gotcha. So sure. So the thing that people ask about that, and that gets a lot of people very upset and very riled up. You should, you shouldn't, that sort of thing. And I know I say this too many times, but animals are a lot like people, and you have to use whatever is necessary, but absolutely no more than that. There are so shock collars have their place. You never use them for punishment. You never use them out of anger. They should always be used with the command, and remember, a dog's attention span is about that of a 3 or 4 year old kid. It's just 2 or 3 minutes. So if you're using it for training purposes, you put it on, you say, "Okay, business time, let's do what we're going to do." And whether you're training to stop something or start something, or the biggest use of shock collars is probably a underground fence or some sort of try to keep the dog in a fenced in area. And most of the time, a dog will learn very quickly what you want them to do. And most collars, I tell folks, if you're going to get a collar, whether it's one you use by a hand press or whether it's one you use on some sort of electronic fence, get one that has several levels and with a beep. And you will find that the vast majority of dogs, no matter what you're trying to get them to do, if they get even the lowest shock level a couple of times, they've already heard that beep and they'll go, I hear the beep, I can't go further than what I just did. Or I hear the beep, Dad wants me to stop, doing whatever I'm doing. I'm going to sit down. And you also reward that on the back end with something positive. You didn't run out of the fence today. Here's a treat. Or you did not bark when the neighbor came over. Here's a treat. Some people don't like them, and there's nothing wrong with not liking them, but I don't find that they have a bad place as long as you are not using, if you're using them as punishment, it's wrong. You should be using it as a training aid along with a positive training on the backside of it. Yes, sir. And believe it or not, you can actually put those, there's a few, for the cat people out there, cats do not do well with fences. They climb them, they jump over them, they do not care. There is and this is not a shameless plug, I'm not connected to this company at all. There is a company called Pet Safe. You can find it on Amazon, Tractor Supply, anywhere. They sell a radio controlled type of collar to keep an animal in a certain perimeter. So you don't have to dig the fence underground. You don't have to worry about the wire or that sort of thing. And it's a collar that now that they make small enough for, I think the weight limit's 5-pound dogs and 5-pound cats. And my dog passed away from age a couple of years ago in a heart disease we had to go through. But anyway, we started using her exact same box on the one cat that we have that likes to go outside. And he touched the fence one time and will not go through it anymore. He's done with it. And if he hears the beep, all the brakes go on and absolutely stops. And you'll find that most animals even get to where they know where the perimeter is. They won't even get to the beep anymore. Emily wants me to tell you a funny story that we watched happen in our backyard about 3 years ago. He'd been used to this fence for a couple of years. And I watched him. He's a little chubby. Yes, even the veterinarian's animals are chubby sometimes. He's a little chubby. And he was laying on the ground stalking this rabbit. And you could tell after this story that he had done this before. And I watched him from the side of the house, and the rabbit starts to run. He tears after the rabbit, running as fast as he can. The rabbit makes it about 10 steps past the perimeter, and the cat pulls up all at once. I hear the beep one time, and the two of them just sit there and look at each other. So those fences work really well to keep your dogs and cats out of trouble, for sure.
Yeah. Wonderful. And thanks for the story too. It sounds to me like the rabbit is the smarter of the two. And maybe a little bit of taunting, but
yes,
rabbits are sweet. Awesome. Thanks for that. Great. So good training advice. We've got a cat question.
Okay.
So this one says, I love the way this is worded. I've been adopted by a feral cat who's been coming for food now since last May. I want to have him neutered and obtain proper shots to protect him, but he's too beautiful to clip his ear. Can you give me some guidance regarding having him trapped and taken care of?
So most of the time, no one's going to necessarily require you to clip that ear. For those of you who don't know, the ear clipping is the very tip of an ear of a feral cat. Like if a SPCA or some organization is trying to trap a colony of cats, they will often have the veterinarian just clip the very tip of the ear off. They do that so that if they recapture that cat, they don't have to handle the cat. They can see the clipped ear and know to release that cat. In this person's case, if they don't want the ear clipped, they don't have to have it done. The other thing that you'll see some organizations do is they'll actually put a small, tiny green tattoo beside the spay incision, or if it's a male, beside the neuter incision. So if anybody ever has the animal, they can just look at it and see it. But trapping the animal, I tell folks, this is not that it's a motto, but it's what I say at work. I tell people all the time on the phone, if you can get the cat in a box to me, we will take care of it after that. And most veterinarians have the ability to work with you, even on the most feral of animals. And it's not a hurting thing or a painful thing. We've just got some tricks up our sleeve that we can do to get them sedated, keep them calm, and get them done and get them back home. And yeah, I'd definitely trap it, because you'd rather do that than have the animal continuing to, have kittens or what have you that are just that don't have a home, for sure.
Absolutely. Do you think, this is a general question, probably, and I know you can't speak for all vets, but do
Huh?
most vets and animal hospitals have the same policy that if you can get a pet to us, or an animal, a found animal, we'll take care of it from there?
It is so if you come in and you have one and you say, I want this is either a cat that I own or a dog
Mhm.
that I own, or if you have a animal that you come in and say, this is if you're a shelter or what have you, almost anybody will work with it. Most of the time, I can't speak for everyone else. Most of the time, most veterinary offices are going to be at least used to working with rough animals. And I don't mean rough in a bad way or a mean way. Animals that most of the time when an animal comes to the vet office, if he is hard to handle, he or she's hard to handle simply because they are scared. That's what it always is. And scared turns into fight or flight, and they will do both. Just like you or I would do if we were put in a situation like that. If you have an animal that is lost or just something that you don't want to necessarily keep or bring back home, most veterinary offices will at least help you get in touch with an SPCA if you have the animal and bring it into those offices. Most vet offices are going to make some attempt to help you or hold the animal until they can get one of the local shelters to come and take care of it. And the shelters in our area, even down here in Moyock, are very, very good. I know Chesapeake, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, all of them have very good shelters with long hours, and they usually do a very good job of helping you when you find an animal that you don't want, of helping you at least to take it in so they can get it some treatment and get it hopefully home back out again.
Awesome. Good
Yeah.
advice. Excellent. Thanks for that. I'm so excited. We have a non-cat or dog question. Hopefully you got your small pets textbook out and brushed up this week. I have a gerbil question for you. We have a gerbil that has lived for 2.5 years. Any special care for our sweet Major?
Okay, now I'm gonna give you my gerbil answer as best as I can. I know as a veterinarian, you are when you graduate from veterinary school, you are licensed to work on literally any animal, period. That does not mean you should work on any animal, period. It just means that you can work on any animal. To the best of my knowledge, at 2.5 years of age, as long as you are using regular gerbil food, regular gerbil water, and finding a gerbil veterinarian, that's about as best of information as I can give you. And if you call my office tomorrow, I have several numbers to refer you to people who are gerbil experts. But other than that, that's all I got.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm so glad that you have the numbers of gerbil specialists. That's awesome. Okay, good. Thanks for that. For the small pet people out there. Next question. So to go back, a follow-up to our shock collar question, is a choke chain dangerous to use while walking? The dog tends to pull out of his regular collar.
A choke chain is necessary only if the animal tells you it's necessary. What I mean by that is that if they have, you use whatever you have to use, and what I mean by that is that if the animal responds to the regular collar and does well use that, if the animal responds to some sort of choke collar, as far as one of the ones that has little spikes and stuff on it, there are some dogs you cannot lead without it, and that doesn't mean they're mean or they're bad. Just means they're like, I gotta go, let's go. And so during those cases, they will pull people down, and it's not always the giant Rottweiler. Sometimes it's the 40-pound lab mix, and they are responding to what you do. The biggest thing with any choke collars, choke leashes, choke anything is, if you are getting upset or angry, stop, because that's not what you want. It's not to be picked up or slung around. It is just the amount of pressure that's needed to make the animal sit or behave. And that's just like the shock collars or the shock devices that you use, that you have a push button for. And some animals need a little bit extra, not because you're being ugly or mean to them, just because you're trying to handle them. So that's not an issue. The one thing that I do tell people is that even on the best of dogs, the vast majority of dogs that come into a vet office or anywhere, if they get out of their collar, it usually just means their collar is not tight enough. But you don't want a super tight collar on a dog 24/7. So the other thing I tell people is, and we give them away at the office, they cost nothing, but most vet offices, and you can buy them anywhere, have some sort of leash that has a slip device on it. So all you're doing is, instead of a choke chain or a collar with a spike device on it, is simply a little rope with a slip knot on. And it's made to where if they pull hard, it pulls a little bit. And then if it doesn't pull hard, it doesn't pull it at all. And so you can start with something. I hand those out all the time to puppy owners, and I say, start with this and see how the dog does. The one thing that is difficult to use a lot of times is that a lot of people, there's nothing wrong with using a harness on a dog, but if you think about how you would hook up a horse or a person to try to get them to pull something, you would put a big set of straps on their shoulders and chest, and you would hook it to their back. And that is how you and I could pull the most we could pull by walking forward with it. And so when you do that to a dog who's trained on it and good at it, no big deal. When you do that to a dog who's 80 pounds and sees the cat over there and wants to go chase it, they're impossible to hold with that, because you're pulling them at their absolute best pressure point to get away from you. They're not being ugly to you. The collar around the neck at least is giving them a head turn or what have you. And it goes, if you think all the way back to the horse, and think about how big a horse is, the reason they wear a halter on their face and you hook their halter to a lead rope right here is simply because you can turn their nose. When you were little and your mama got mad at you and she grabbed you on the chin and turned your face around, that's because it didn't work when she grabbed you back here. She grabbed you right here on the face, or not around your neck, hopefully, but she grabbed you where she could get her hands on you. And anyway, this is where my mother always grabbed me. She still does today.
Smart. That's I never thought about that before, that by putting a pet in a harness, you're essentially equipping them to pull with their most concentrated strength. And
if you ever watch, they do some, you think about animal pulling as a competition, they do horse pulling all the time, but they also do dog pulls. And they're I mean, it's a sport. They're kind of fun to watch. And those animals are hooked in just like a horse, strap on the back, and they can pull significant amounts of weight like that. So it puts you just at a massive disadvantage. If some animals walk in the hospital and they're just trotting along nicely on a harness, those are the dogs who are either easy leaders or they're easy to break. But if you've got a dog who's chasing the cat or happy to see the other person or the other dog, they're the ones that are getting snatched all over everywhere.
Yeah, good advice. Thanks for that. Awesome. Okay, so the next question, I'm going to expand on this a little bit. It's a two-parter. So the first part says, do dogs get lonely when left all day alone?
Yes and no. That's a horrible answer. Let me start over again. Some dogs are dogs, and I've said this a bunch tonight, dogs are very much like people. If Emily and I sat at this house 24 hours a day together, for those who don't know, Emily's my wife, about day 3, she's ready for me to get out of the house. So sometimes being apart is fine, and it is very dog dependent. Some dogs are going to be very unhappy when you're not home, but the vast majority of dogs get very used to whatever pattern you do. And what I mean by that is if you go to work 5 days a week and you leave at 8 in the morning and you get home at 5 in the evening, or whatever it is that you do, most dogs quickly adapt to that, and they learn how to handle things on their own. There are some dogs who are going to have separation anxiety to the point that if you go to the grocery store for 30 minutes, they're going to be upset about the situation. And there's different training techniques and medications for that, but it is not, I don't think that the vast majority of dogs sit around and lament the fact that no one's home. I think they're pretty good on their own and happy to see you when you get back. And that's not a great answer, but it's most dogs tolerate that very well. There are dogs who have anxiety when people leave or when anything changes. Change for dogs is sometimes tough, just like some people have trouble with change, but and those can be managed medically most of the time. But the other thing that people are worried about, I hear this question all the time about leaving their dog, and people say, well, Tracy, my dog, I have to go to work or I have to go here, and my dog seems very, not that the dog's upset, the people worry, I have to put my dog in this big crate, or I put him in the kitchen and put up the baby gates. And if you put a video on those dogs and watch them on your phone, they're sleeping, they're laying around. Most of the time, they're just as happy as they can be. And crate use in a dog, dogs treat a crate very much like a person treats their bedroom. And if you think about the dog was made to have a den or a place to go to. And so a lot of times dogs will go into a crate, even when, if they've been used to it, even when the door's open and something's going on and they go, I'm tired, I'm gonna go lay down in here. So dogs get very good at hanging out in there. It's not something you want to do all the time, not a 24-hour a day thing and not a punishment thing, but most of them do fine when people are gone. They do fine.
Awesome. And so my follow-up to that is, so for dogs, obviously it's kind of personality driven and depends on the individual dog. Is that generally the same for cats and other animals as well? Or are cats generally better off on their own across the board, or do you see it less with cats?
I have 4 cats, and I think that my cats, or any cat, is just happy if you're here at feeding time. That's about it. That doesn't mean they're not smart. That doesn't mean they don't have giant, because our 4 cats have giant personalities. But I can be gone for 3 or 4 days and come in and they're doing the exact same thing as when I left, and they act the exact same way. And it does not matter if I've got a house sitter here or what have you. Emily often comes home if we've been gone for a day or two, and she goes, they didn't even miss us at all. I say, well, they're at least happy. And some of them are going to be a little more, you see the problem more in dogs, for dogs who have a little more of an issue with people leaving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So thanks for that. The second part of this question specifically about, so going back to dogs, so how do I know if getting a second dog would provide companionship for him or cause problems such as jealousy? And also, could you talk a little bit about introducing additional pets when you've already got a dog and a routine established at home?
That's a good question. So lots of people like to do that, and there's several scenarios. So the first thing I'll say is that read your dog. If you have a dog that, when you take the dog out on a walk or wherever, if your dog is happy to see other dogs and inquisitive about other dogs, that dog is probably going to tolerate / like another dog. If your dog sees other dogs and runs behind the tree, or wants to, be upset and bark and vocalize, that dog's going to have a little bit of a harder time, just like people. Some people like to be alone, some people don't. And so I tell folks to watch them like that. The other thing that I have seen, and this is going to be a very wishy-washy statement, a lot of people, when their older dog make up something, let's say you've got this Labrador Retriever and they're 10 years old, and you say, okay, I think it's time for me to get another puppy to make my dog feel good again. That goes good a lot of times, but it goes pretty horrible a lot of times if the puppy's just too much. Sometimes it brings the older dog out. Sometimes the older dog lays in the corner and goes, why did you bring this creature in here for me to deal with every day? And so that's very dog dependent on what kind of dog you have, or I don't mean a breed, but how your dog is. The other thing, the one hard and fast rule is, and if anybody has female dogs that live together in harmony, that's perfect. And that happens all the time. But if you have a dog and you're thinking about getting another one, the biggest housemate fighting that we see are between girls. And I always say at work, that's not a sexist statement. That just happens. In the dog world, the females are in charge. They run the place. They run everything. And if you watch a pack of wolves or a pack of foxes, you'll have a girl and she'll be 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And then she's in charge of the whole thing. If you fast forward and you put her out to 10, 11, 12, she will have someone that is 2 or 3 that is trying to run her off, hurt her, or get rid of her. And so in the household dog world, the females run everything. And so same thing. Sometimes you'll have 2 very submissive girls. They get along great together. Sometimes you'll have a submissive girl and you'll have an alpha girl, and they do okay. If you have 2 girls together that are a little bit alpha, they can be rough enough to the point that they're very hard to keep together. And so if someone comes in and they have a new girl puppy, I don't give them a hard time or tell them they did something wrong. But if someone comes in and says, Tracy, I have a female dog, I love it, it's great, the first thing I tell them to do is get a male and neuter it. Or if they have a male, I'll often tell them to get a female. And the guys don't seem to care. The male dogs go, whatever, she's in charge, and they just kind of do what they do. And they all get along pretty good like that. But and that's not an across the board statement, but you would not have to work at a vet office very long before you would see that the girl dogs are the ones in charge in the house. And it doesn't matter if it's a 10-pound or a 5-pound Chihuahua. If she's in charge, she will run the Rottweilers out of the room. She's in charge. Anyway.
Good. Makes sense. So if you do have a second animal coming in, are there like some practical steps to introducing? I mean, I know when you adopt the SPCA, they have like you have to bring the family in and any pets at home and kind of do the introduction there to
Yes.
see how they interact. But say that
That,
all goes well and you bring the dog home, things to in the first few days, the first week, ways to integrate the dog into the family when you've already got a pet.
exactly. And I forgot to answer that, Joel. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So
That's
what
right.
you do there is, I always say this statement: don't forget the old dog, whether it's an old young dog or just don't forget the dog you've always had. A lot of people tend to, oh, I love the puppy and play with the puppy. So let's back up. New dog comes to the house. The first thing to do is get them, even if they met at the shelter, get them together in the neighbor's yard or get them together somewhere where your original dog, it's not their favorite place to be. Don't bring them into the room and throw them in the crate with the other dog. If the other dog says, okay, I love this part of the yard, don't start there. Start where your original dog doesn't care quite so much. And the original is going to go, oh, is this my neighbor's dog or who are you? And you kind of let them meet like that. And then when you get them in the house, pay attention, of course, to the new dog, but over the coming days and weeks, make sure that the original dog still gets to feel like, hey, dad, mom still love me. And that sounds silly, but it happens. You can make a mess like that. The other thing is that in most cases, if you have a dog who is in charge, whether it's the female or whether it's some male dog, if you have a dog that you know, a lot of times I'll ask an owner, okay, you have 4 dogs, who's the boss at the house? And most of the time they will tell you who the boss is. Remember, you have to, unlike the human world, you have to let the boss be the boss. And so what I mean by that is, whether it's the new dog after 3 or 4 weeks and she's in charge or he's in charge, whether it's the old dog, you always will, they're the ones who go through the door first. They're the ones who get petted first. They're the ones who get fed first. You can cause a gigantic nightmare by saying, I'm going to be fair, and the world should be fair, but the dog world is not fair the way humans see it. So in other words, if you've got a set of dogs and you know that this dog always is supposed to eat first, feed that dog first, pet it on the head first. The other dogs don't want you to feed them first because they're going to get beaten up by the first dog if you do it in the wrong order. And you even see that just at the vet office, just walking them through the door the wrong order, that sort of thing. But as long as you treat them and don't forget the original dog, you're usually in good shape.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Good. Okay. So there is a follow-up. So back to the feral cat question. This person asked, so they're in Hampton and the vet personnel they've contacted has offered to lend a cage, but this person's uncomfortable. Is there, do you have a recommendation for somebody in Hampton that would come out and get the cat?
I'm not familiar with Hampton as far as who would come out to get the cat, but I will say this: even if you brought the cat catching expert out there, cats are very, very, very difficult to catch when they don't want to be caught. And so what I tell folks to do, most of these, and they're probably talking about sending you a live trap, which most people are kind of familiar with that. It's just kind of stainless steel looking trap. The thing to do is, and it sounds a little harsh, if the cat is hungry or food motivated, they will almost always come and eat. And that is how, whether it's a feral cat colony or whatever is happening, or if you're a SPCA, that is how you end up catching most of these. Some people say, well, Tracy, can we get a little sedative and give it to them? Any oral sedative that you give a cat or dog, the animal usually won't eat it unless you're force feeding it to them, and you can't catch the cat anyway to do that. And B, most of the time when that happens, even if you get the animal to eat it, it's not going to be enough for you to get your hands on them, and they're going to walk off, and it's going to be 40 minutes before they get really sleepy. So that's one thing that doesn't work well. Now, it sounds harsh, but those those live traps, usually what will happen is that the animal eventually decides to go in, and you might catch the neighbor's cat and then you turn him loose, and you might catch the possum and you turn that loose. But once they get into the trap, the thing to do is cover it with something, because the cat's scared to death. And you cover it with a towel, a blanket, just cover the whole thing up, and then do your best to get him to the vet office, and they can go from there. But there is not a good, fun, easy way, and I don't mean that in an ugly way. They're hard to catch. It's hard to catch a cat, and if we have a feral cat that gets away from us in the office, you'll hear the girls yell, shut all the doors, everybody shut the doors. So you're trying to keep them in one room, and they are extremely difficult to get your hands on. So it's not easy, but those traps will work if you keep feeding and feeding. Some cats also, if they're not terribly feral, you can even feed them in a regular crate. And if you have a cat that's kind of hard to catch, and you say, I want to take the cat to the vet, if you feed that cat in a regular cat carrier and never feed it anywhere but in there, after 2 or 3 weeks, the cat goes, this is where I eat. And then one day you just simply slip up and shut the door, and the cat's going to freak out a little bit. That's okay. Don't get bit. But in those cases, most of the time, if you get them to the vet office, most veterinarians can handle them for you.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Feral cats are they're highly adept at escaping and staying loose.
They are.
So,
they are.
That's their livelihood. Awesome. So thanks for that. So we do still have some time. If you've got questions that you want answered, please share them. I do have a few questions to sort of round us out here, close us up. Some really good ones here and very practical and helpful ones. This one I need to ask for everybody. So the holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas, lots of pumpkin decorations, everything's already starting to come out in the fall. So what are some of the most common problems and issues during the holidays with household pets?
Gotcha. So dogs first, then cats. And some of these overlap a little bit. Everybody always talks about the mistletoe and the holly and things like that. On the good side of things, the vast majority of the Christmas stuff, as far as those plants and things go that we put out, usually will cause GI upset, maybe diarrhea. Now, this is not me telling you, if you have a problem, if you are worried, please go see your veterinarian. That is not me telling you not to go to your veterinarian. But most of the time, if you have that 50-pound dog decides to eat some of the mistletoe, you usually are going to get a little vomiting, a little diarrhea, as long as it's transient and it's just a couple of times and you can handle it and the dog's doing okay and getting over it, you're okay. If you get worried, you go to the veterinarian, but most of the time it's just GI upset. It's not a terribly toxic thing, so to speak. The other things that you worry about at the holidays are all the stuff that we're eating, the chocolate and the things of that nature. So remember, the big ones are chocolate and anything in the onion garlic category, grapes, raisins, all the stuff you like to decorate with. Those can cause some metabolic problems with the liver and kidneys. And so if you see a dog that has eaten that, that's a reason to at least get on the phone with the veterinarian and talk to them and see what kind of advice they get. The other thing I think we talked about it the last time we did this is that everybody who owns a dog, don't do this to your cat, but everybody who owns a dog should have a in-date, unopened bottle of hydrogen peroxide. That will save you more misery and more money than you can possibly imagine. So let's do a scenario. Dog decides that he's going to walk up and eat 17 bags of chocolate chips or whatever. He eats his belly full of chocolate chips. You're getting ready to make cookies. And you go, this is a mess. He is probably going to throw up anyway. But the thing to do is to give that dog, if it's your average 40, 50, 60-pound dog, a tablespoon or two of regular hydrogen peroxide. It will not be pretty. It will be a mess. Go outside or get on the tile. Do not do it on your carpet. And in about 5 to 7 minutes, that dog should vomit. If he does not, repeat it again. And you will almost always empty a dog and save yourself a ton of misery with that. Never wrong to call the veterinarian and talk to them. We have some other tricks up our sleeve and medications that we can give injectively that will make them vomit when the peroxide doesn't work. But getting the bad out is a very good thing. And there's always a misnomer. A lot of veterinarians disagree with each other on this. Sometimes people will say, well, my dog ate this 2 hours ago. Well, if you get half of it out, that's better than none of it out. So it doesn't really hurt a dog to vomit. You give him the stuff, he throws up, he gets over it in 15 or 20 minutes, and that's kind of the end of it. So that's always a big thing to have. Cats are a little different. Cats are not near as bad in most cases at eating the chocolate and the things that hurt them. You'll see them chew on the mistletoe sometimes, but not a lot. If they do, it's usually GI upset. The big things you worry about at the holidays are the ribbons and the decoration. The problem you run into is that when a cat eats or a dog too, when they start to eat ribbons and long pieces of cloth and things, they can cause some really bad linear cuts in their small intestines, and that becomes an emergency very quick. So if you're suspecting that, get them to the vet office as soon as you can. Yeah.
Okay, good tip. So just year round have the peroxide, but
peroxide is year round.
Especially the holidays
when
the chocolate chips are laying around.
Yes.
Good stuff. Excellent. Okay, another question for you. When do local ducks migrate?
Local ducks migrate.
Yeah,
The vast majority. Now, are we talking about local ducks and Canadian geese, that sort of thing?
sure.
Local ducks and Canadian geese have probably flew less mileage than most of the people on this chat today. The vast majority of local ducks and Canadian geese that you see sitting around all the ponds in Chesapeake, Norfolk, and Currituck have probably never gone more than 15 miles from where they're sitting. And they are what I call, instead of Canadian geese, I call them Moyoc geese and Chesapeake geese. They're extremely adaptive, and they have learned to live here without ever having to migrate anywhere. And that's why in the spring you see all the babies, because they've made this their home. So they're fun. Some people call them a nuisance, but anyway, they're here to stay. I think they're very, very adaptive animals for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I actually heard, you'll appreciate this. I was at the gardens, the botanical gardens, and they're doing a tour. And I don't know if this is true or not, or this is just this one particular person's thought, but he said that they are actually thinking about renaming Canadian geese because most of them don't migrate.
Exactly.
They're adapted to here, and it's almost a new species because they're here.
It is, and they're
generationally.
exactly. I agree with you, and I have heard that before too. There is a group of true Canadian geese that migrate back and forth every year, but the vast majority of the ones that we see driving around, they're local. They've been here for generations.
Yeah, good. Oh, I've got a follow-up for you. So some more information. The specific question was about mallards, and the reason this person is asking because they are generous and they buy duck food for the local neighborhood ducks, and they just want to know if they should continue to buy it throughout the winter.
Yes, because they are looking to, a duck is so adaptive, they will eat what you give it. And I don't mean it in a bad way. If you're feeding it, they're happy. And feeding them in the winter is even better than the summer because there's less to eat in the winter. So if they don't mind the ducks being there, keep feeding them because the ducks are going to love them for it. I can promise you that.
Yeah, wonderful. Good. So keep feeding the ducks. So one final question from the chat, and then I do want to close with the lightning round that you sent because I'm interested to hear. But this final question from the chat is a good one. So what have you learned about the Lord through your work with animals? How has it enriched your faith walk?
So I think that comes because I look at animals as the best in all of us. The dog and the cat are often nicer than people. I don't mean that in a bad way. I love everybody, but they're nicer than people a lot of times. They have a bigger heart. The vast majority of dogs wake up in the morning and all they want to do is look at you and say, what can I do to make you happy today? What can I do to be kind to you today? What can I do to make your day better? I had a dog that we had to put down. We'd had her for 10 years, and she was probably and everybody has a story, but she was probably my very best friend. And she had helped me through the best of times and the worst of times. And that's the way I look at it. They are, not to sound sacrilegious, they are what a good Christian should be, in my opinion, a lot of times. And so that's kind of what I take away from that. They even the dog who comes into the vet office that looks like he wants to growl or bite, they're almost never mean, or and the cat too. They're never that. They're only doing that because they're scared. And once you get them unscared, to get them to where they're calm and calm back down, then it's, hey, how can I make you feel better today? It's the cat purring and rubbing your leg and saying, hey, what's up, Dad? What can I do for you? That's kind of the way I take about it in the spiritual realm, so to speak. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tracy, for answering all of our questions in the chat. This has been great. I do want to close. So you offered this, and I'm going to, I may expand the list a little bit. So the lightning round, other species besides cat and dogs, in a sentence or two, what do you know about them? And I was going to ask you to rank them or tell us what your favorites are besides cat and dogs, but I won't put you on the spot that much. But just in a sentence or two. So for the following list, what do you know about guinea pigs?
There's a board question on the National Board exam about guinea pigs. I don't remember anything other than to write down the word vitamin C. They always need vitamin C. That's it.
Okay, vitamin C. Good. What do you know about pigs?
Pigs are delicious. And if anyone ever tries to sell you a mini pig, if your child wants a mini pig, they do not exist. There's no such thing as a mini pig. They all end up being 200 to 250 pounds, and they are, in 95% of households, a wonderful animal and a horrible pet.
Sounds
And
good.
no veterinarian will work on them. No veterinarian wants to work on a pig.
Oh, really? I didn't know
No.
that.
Wait a minute, that's too big. Some veterinarians will work on a pig, but if you want to have some fun, call 10 small animal veterinarians tomorrow and see how many you get to come see your pig.
Okay, challenge accepted.
Yes.
Good. I'll pull the crowd. What do you know about goats?
In the words of my college roommate, JB Riddick, he went to high school with me, we went to vet school together, he raises goats. This is blunt. JB Riddick says a goat wakes up every morning and he is looking for a way to break out of the pen and find some way or another to die or kill himself. And so goats are beautiful to look at, very hard to keep. And on a real medical side note, there is no place better in the United States than Eastern North Carolina, Eastern Virginia for goat parasites. If you don't deworm your goat every month, you're going to have Parasite City there. Anyway, that was blunt, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, good heads up. I always joke about getting one so I don't have to mow the lawn anymore, but it doesn't sound worth it. They'd probably just wander out into traffic or something.
Exactly.
Awesome. What do you know about cows?
I work on cows because my father says I still owe him, and he's probably right. I will say there is probably nothing more beautiful than a baby calf 2 hours after it is born. They are probably, don't hate me dog and cat people, they're probably my favorite animal to work on. They are tough as nails. They can do anything. I love working on them. There's just not a lot of cows here. To be a veterinarian and make a living working on cows, you either have to be working for a giant cattle processing company, or you need to be in Nebraska or somewhere like that where they're everywhere. Yeah.
Good. Thanks for that. What do you know about parrots?
And so you got me on that one. Parrots, I know virtually nothing about. I have a licensed technician that messes with them a little bit, not at my office. Please don't call me if you have a parrot. The worst story, so at school they always taught us that if you handle a parrot with any stress whatsoever, you are probably going to kill it. This is blunt again. My best friend in veterinary school, we were doing a parrot lab one day. He picked it up gently. He was not harmful to it. The professor was there. The parrot looked at him, gasped one time, and passed away. And the professor said, "See, I told you so." So that was kind of that was my parrot experience in veterinary school. I stink at birds. Stink it.
Not a good one, it sounds like.
No.
All right, thank you for that. Horses.
Horses, I love. I had a few. We had 3 or 4 growing up when I was a kid. I got my first one when I was 8 years old. They are wonderful animals. They are expensive to keep. So if someone's going to get a horse, you either have to take into consideration the amount of where you're going to board them at, what have you, or if you have enough land where you got to get a facility for them to stay in. But I love horses. Their biggest 2 medical problems are probably colic. They love to have GI problems, and there's another issue with their feet called laminitis or foundering. They like to do that a lot too, but they're very nice animals. It just takes a lot. The finance there is a little bit higher than in dogs and cats.
Wonderful. Let me see. I got 2 more for you. Llamas.
I've been chased by a llama and spit on by a llama. That's about it.
That they're good at both of those.
Yes.
My wife Amy's been sneezed on by a llama.
Oh yes,
they sneeze, they spit, and they chase. Wonderful. And I think Amy's on here, so I have to apologize. I hope she doesn't mind me sharing that kind of private bit of information. Last one on your list. What do you know about chickens?
So chickens are big. Chickens have just in the last 5, 6, 7 years, everybody wants to have a chicken. The local municipalities had to make ordinances on who could have a rooster or not. I grew up with them my whole life. they're probably smarter than people think. They are very habitual to do the same thing over and over again. The chicken veterinarians of the world are rolling their eyes. There's not a lot of veterinary maintenance to do on them. When I was in veterinary school, if you called and you said my pet chicken has a problem, the chicken professor there wanted you to bring 3 live ones and 3 sick ones, and they wanted a necropsy all 6 of them. And so there wasn't very much medicine as far as an individual chicken. I have since learned in the last couple of years that now you can call NC State University and there's a department on pet chickens. And I think that came about because so many people started to have them. We have them here at the house now. We enjoy them. Eggs everywhere, that sort of thing. In the area we live in now, all of us, Virginia, North Carolina, the biggest thing you worry about when you own chickens is predation. Hawks love to eat them. And of course, the neighbor's dog and coyotes are big around the area right now. But they're good to have if you have a little room to mess with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are really taking off in popularity, it seems like.
They really have.
And if anybody is thinking about getting into chickens, I think Hunter has a friend in the valley that has a chicken coop that may or may not be for sale. So give Hunter a call if you're looking to get into chickens. Yeah, there she goes. Hunter just said in the chat, I can sell you a chicken coop. She'll make a deal. You get a special discount if you've attended this class. Just drop Tracy's name and she'll hook you up. Well, Tracy, this has been awesome. I expected it would be after last season's session, and we always greatly appreciate you sharing your expertise and certainly your love for animals, and I'm just sure that everybody that's on this class this evening, that all of our furry and slithery and scaly friends will be much better off for having your advice and sharing with us a little bit about the animal world. So thanks for everything and all of the great work you do, and we just love you. And thanks to everybody for being on this call. This was awesome.
Thank you guys. You guys have a great evening, and look forward to seeing you at church soon. Take care.
Thanks.